I want to suggest as well that one of the biases from which we suffer and one of the decision traps into which we can fall is overconfidence. Okay, there's a tremendous amount of research on this, and it's very, very relevant to organisations both in the public and the private sector. To quote David Dunning and Justin Kruger, workers think their absentee record is better than the typical employee. Motorcyclists think they are less likely to cause an accident than other bikers. Elderly drivers tend to think that they are better drivers than other individuals their age. Business executives think their firm is more likely to succeed than the typical firm in their business sector. Bungee jumpers even think they are less likely to meet harm than will the typical bungee jumper, a perception that is not shared by their family and friends, okay? And the reason I mention this is that so many of these things are subjective, okay? We have a subjective sense of overconfidence relative to our own abilities and so forth, okay? There's a great deal of research in relation to this. I've had some interesting experiences with this, and I'll tell you a story about it momentarily, but one of the primary ways excuse me, in which this can manifest, this overconfidence bias, okay, is in the form of what's called planning fallacy. Are we familiar with the idea of planning fallacy? Brooke?
I'm familiar with the concept, but not the theory behind it.
Yeah. Tremendous amount of evidence in relation to this. This idea, this human tendency to underestimate the time, costs and risks of future tasks while overestimating the benefits. Okay, this is something which has been demonstrated time and again in literature, and might be something with which you're familiar. And we very much tend to plan on the basis of the best case scenario. Okay, and this is my favourite example. It's an oldie but a goodie. I think it illustrates this point really well. A group of postgraduate master's students many years ago were asked to estimate how long it would take for them to complete their senior thesis. Okay, the average estimate was 33.9 days. Again, subjective according to the student themselves. Then they were asked, what if everything went as well as it possibly could? How long might it take you? The average estimate there was 27.4 days, if everything just went swimmingly. Okay. Then they were asked, what if everything went as poorly as it possibly could? The estimate, of course, was 48.6 days. And then, what was the actual average completion time? It was 55.5 days. Okay. We plan on the basis of the best case scenario. And what's really interesting about this is that even when we've engaged in that activity before, and it's taken us a certain amount of time, we still often underestimate how long it will take. Yeah? Even when we're aware of planning fallacy bias, we still underestimate how long things will take.
Like any time you do anything around your house.
Like exactly, yeah. Just thinking about personal decision making.
Yeah. Yeah. Painted that many rooms and I never paint them on time. But every time I can do that in a day.
Yeah. I think it's a really good example, Matt. It's a bit like the Murphy's Law, things always take longer than you expect. And it's so often true. And there are a whole lot of means by which we can actually offset or try to reduce the impact of planning fallacy bias. Okay, and I won't go through these extensively now, but we can realistically evaluate, for example, rather than suppress pessimistic opinions. I'm sure we've all found ourselves in a situation organisationally where people upstairs, and it might be you throughout your career, who has been told to deliver something by a certain amount of time. And that's fine, but sometimes there might be those people who hold a more pessimistic view of how long things will take. And I think there is that tendency by many managers and executives to suppress those sorts of opinions in the interest of, no, we'll get it done by this particular time, okay? We can expect unknown and unforeseen problems. We can seek an outsider's view. That's a really powerful way of estimating how long something will take, the resources required and so forth as far as our planning processes are concerned. We can try and avoid anchoring, and I'll talk about that a bit later on. And I've said down the bottom there, seriously consider the time taken, resources required, and problems experienced by similar projects.